putting up the cash and pay into the equity so that whatever left on the market, someone want to take over, that's going to be a minority holder. Um, and delaying it, having a poison pills in place allow the company increase value over time. Obviously, they're going to try to outbid together at some point. As in case in Arena, they've been acquired by Pfizer for 6.7 billion just a few months ago because that poison pills actually help create interest in the market. I think the acquisition here going to cost, when they take it over, it's going to cost him probably at least 12 the premium at minimum. So there's going to be a bidding war going on. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, let's keep the ball rolling here. The next one is a new study that specifically looked at political speech suggests Twitter content moderation is biased against misinformation, but not conservatives specifically. For the if you don't want to get banned, stop sharing bullshit department, an actually interesting academic study exploring Twitter's bias. And the outcome of this study was that it was not. Okay. Next is from CNBC that Apple employees unionizing at Grand Central Terminal. I guess that's in New York City. Is there an Apple store at near Grand Central Station?
Beautiful store in the station.
Okay. They want $30 per hour minimum pay, tuition reimbursement, more vacation time, and better retirement options. So the workers organizing a union at Apple Grand Central Terminal store are seeking minimum pay of $30 an hour, etc. Let's see how well they do. Next is from TechCrunch. A U.S. appeals court reaffirms that scraping publicly available or accessible content on the internet is legal. Oh, snap. Ending a landmark case LinkedIn brought against rivals called HiQ Labs. That also means that Clearview, which scraped all of your photos that you publicly posted to build one of the world's largest facial recognition databases. And boy, there's all kinds of products and services that are built on scraping publicly accessible content. So
please pin that. Please pin that one.
Will do. Here it comes. Copy link. And where's the Clubhouse? Here we go. Pinning in progress. 1 second. There you go.
Thank you, sir, because that has been an ongoing debate in Sweden for quite a while. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next up, code on Twitter's website reveals how an upcoming edit button could work by making a new tweet with the updated content and listing the old tweets before the edit. So it would show your previous edits, basically. Your previous versions. It would have your newest version with the time, and it would show your previous versions with those times. So people would be aware that, I think that's the right way to do it. So that the people who left comments on the original version don't look like idiots. And it prevents you from making them look like idiots because they responded to your original version and not your new version, what have you. Looks like they might have a solution there. Next is a smart home and IoT company called Insteon seemingly shuts down as home hubs suddenly stop working and LinkedIn profiles of top executives show their roles have ended. So if you have Insteon smart home system and it's gone down, people are getting reports that the company's going down. Okay. Next is from CNBC that Amazon discloses that it will conduct a racial equity audit led by former U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch in response to a shareholder proposal. Amazon said it will conduct a racial equity audit. And there it is. Next is from India. It says Indian-based cryptocurrency exchange called Coin DCX raises $136 million at a $2.1 billion valuation. There's a double unicorn in India. CNBC says that London-based company called Seon, S-E-O-N, which helps fintech firms tackle online fraud, raises 94 million. DuckDuckGo CEO says that the service removing piracy websites are made up and blames an issue with its search function. Andreessen Horowitz unveils something they call START, which is an accelerator that offers early stage founders up to $1 million in capital from its seed fund after quietly piloting the program for over a year. So now you've got Andreessen Horowitz with a little accelerator. That's pretty exciting. And I think Sequoia, their new thing, which I'm trying to remember what they call it. I should know what they call it because we're going to talk about it at my event tomorrow with Sequoia on stage. What do they call that new program? Here, it's on my website for the event. It's called. It's loading. Oh, this. What do they call it? ARC. ARC. Okay, that's cool. So Sequoia has ARC, and now Andreessen Horowitz has. They're calling it START. It's called. Okay. So the next one is, let's see what we've got. MIT Review has an article saying that they're doing a look at AI-powered surveillance in South Africa as CCTV cameras and fiber internet proliferate. And there's one company operating more than 5,000 cameras in Johannesburg. Algorithmic stablecoins have surged in popularity, but critics say they are inherently risky as they aren't backed by any assets at all. A company called Fortress Information Security has, which helps companies automate supply chain management, raises a ton of money from Goldman Sachs. And what else? Microsoft says it will pay up to $26,000 more in bug bounties for high impact bugs, which I'm sure there's plenty of those to go around. Robotic process automation startup called Lai raises $70 million. An NFT collection called Moonbirds, with a group of 1,000 NFT collectors, just did $281 million in sales. A French music streaming service, Deezer, plans to go public via a SPAC. Microsoft's working on a program to let select brands advertise within free-to-play Xbox games. So now you're going to have ads inside of the games, such as on billboards inside the games. Yes, Ken?
Yeah, I was about to say, you of all people, even though I know you're friends with the guy who runs Spotify, shouldn't just like run by Deezer. Deezer, for Americans who don't know, is a really important music service in Europe. It's like it's almost like the Spotify of Europe. It's a very big, or like Apple Music. It's a very big music service platform over in Europe.
Yes, sir.
It's nothing, right?
Yeah, nothing to sneeze at, yeah. So now we've got a whole bunch of tweets to get through. Let's see. While I start looking at those, does anyone have a particular tweet they saw since we met last time that they want to make sure we mention?
Yeah, tell. I wanted to mention because I don't know if you did because I just joined the room. Is did you talk about Apple TV buying the football rights in the United States? Even
No.
though that's a very hot rumor, but it was probably the biggest rumor going around. Certainly, Wall Street yesterday was that Apple TV is going to get the rights not for the next season because it's the season after from something called Sunday Ticket. So this is kind of an American thing because it's American football, which is really popular here. And so for many years, DirecTV has had the right for something called Sunday Ticket that for maybe an additional $300 a year above your satellite bill, if you get your TV from satellite, you got access to all these football games. And they haven't done well. DirecTV has lost like millions of customers as people have not only so-called cut the cord with cable, they've they've cut it with satellite as well. And so AT&T took a tremendous financial loss on DirecTV 6-7 years ago. They bought it for like $70 billion, and they ended up selling it effectively at a value that was closer to like 16 billion. So they lost like 50 something $billion on DirecTV. So they want to get out of that. They're not going to go rebid it. And the story that's not confirmed yet, even though this it's all over in like 20 different publications, supposedly waiting for Apple to approve the release of the story, is that Apple is going to get the rights for about $2.5 billion a year to do Sunday Ticket. So that is another foray of Apple TV into streaming TV, streaming television. For those that weren't paying attention, they now have the rights for part of Major League Baseball. They televise Major League Baseball on Friday nights, and I've been saying for a while they're going to try to get really big in like a Netflix, like in whether you want to call it TV or movies. I'm not even sure what you call this stuff now when it's streamed to the home. And the reason they're paying so much attention to sports, and particularly for football, and by the way, keep in mind also that Amazon got the rights for Thursday night football. So now you have the traditional tech companies taking the role that used to be for Fox and NBC and CBS in the United States. The reason why I think Apple's going into sports even probably faster than they're going into making movies, but believe me, they're going into that too. They That's the way you pick up subscribers really fast. That's how Fox got built in the United States prior to the I guess the late '80s, early '90s. There was really no Fox other than the motion picture Fox, the 20th Century Fox. When you went to the movies and you saw that thing, there was no Fox in the home. There was no TV, Fox TV, Fox News, any of that stuff. Fox was built initially by buying the rights for football and then going and getting mostly CBS affiliates to transfer their loyalty so that the people who own local TV stations that were affiliated, let's say, with CBS in 1988 or 1990, they said, hey, switch your affiliation, come affiliate with the Fox network, and you'll now have Sunday football because we just bought the rights for football. So that's the reason I think Apple's going into this, and it's really quite significant news in the United States. If it turns out to be true, I can tell you there's 20 different stories on it that supposedly this is going to happen. So probably maybe even by next week we'll hear about it officially, I think. And that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Other interesting tweets happening. There's a whole bunch of them that I just found. One from Jeff G. from the Wall Street Journal. It says, friend or bot, that phony gamers, bot gamers on video games, leave actual human players feeling betrayed. 7 of the 10 most played mobile games use software programs disguised as humans, pitting mortals against machines, but the people feel like they're playing other humans when in reality they're playing machines and didn't really know it. And then when they do find out, they feel bad. So that's happening. And then BB found one from South China Morning Post that China draws up a white list to bolster industrial supply chains amid lockdowns. Under the system, the government will cherry pick certain businesses from different sectors that are deemed as strategically important. And by allowing key producers to function as normally as possible, China is aiming to reduce the impact of strict lockdown measures and keep grease in the wheels and the ball rolling. And then BB found one from CNN that some airlines are making masks optional after a federal judge in Florida struck down the Biden administration's mask mandate for airplanes and other public transport methods. Some airlines are making them optional. And I have to say, having just flown from Bangkok to Stockholm a few hours ago, it certainly seemed like they were very much optional on that flight. I have to say, I've never seen anything quite like that since COVID started. And Ben, you have one from KTLA. Is Ben still with us? It's about a shooting suspect in custody after police pursuit in Los
Oh
Angeles.
yeah, yeah. So this, so the angle here was just what was the headline? Read the headline, and
It
it's a
says
language issue.
shooting suspect in custody after police pursuit.
Ah, okay. But see, the way you said it, you said shooting suspect, but the way that you can also read that is shooting, because the thumbnail is two what look like bodies lying on the ground. So it can be read as shooting suspect in custody,
Hello.
i.e., this person's already in custody and then be shot, which is why I think it's got 2.5 million views, or 25 million views rather. So the
Hey,
note there
Peanut.
was
What
just
you
the
doing? Now I
language.
do
This
my
could be
event
shooting
on my
suspect,
computer, my
shooting.
show.
Shooting suspect is everything,
I do my show,
and just shows how
my
the
event.
language
I
gets
know.
twisted. And I know
Now
it's
it's
one of your
time for my
pet peeves.
event. Okay, wait, Peanut. Baba. Okay, thank you for that. So I know what you mean. It's there's a new
Yeah,
art in journalism, which is
because I watched it to the end thinking they were going to shoot the suspect in custody.
right,
I'm like, okay, they've got the guys out the car, they've got them on the floor, they've laid them on their stomachs. If they shoot them now, there's a real problem, right? These guys are in custody. And I even watched it after they're handcuffed. I'm like, when are they going to get shot? And then, of
right,
course, they don't get shot. It's a shooting suspect that's in custody, which is no news at all.
right.
And it's just
Yeah, the language there is
the
incredibly
language
tricky.
is, yeah, and stories get spread before people even say watch the video. A
Right.
lot of people, myself included, spread stories on the headline. So the world that we could be thinking that we're experiencing, if you just say, oh, in America they even shoot suspects when they're in custody. No, watch the video, think critically. It's slow down a little. Yeah. Anyway, rant over.
The winners and losers of Amazon's massive rocket deal. Amazon just bought up most of the world's satellite launch capacity in a big deal. Amazon made the largest commercial rocket launch purchase ever to launch satellites for its mega constellation set to compete against SpaceX's Starlink. The competition will certainly be good there. And speaking of Elon Musk, Poppy found this one from Bloomberg that in defense of Elon Musk's managerial excellence, Bloomberg says the Tesla's CEO's track record proves he's a preeminent builder of businesses and maximizer of shareholder value. Yeah, you got to give him that. So as a Twitter shareholder, something to think about. And then Ken found this one that Rivian, which is a Tesla competitor and Amazon backed, Rivian CEO says that the looming EV battery shortage will make the current semiconductor shortage end up upending the auto industry feel like a small appetizer. Much of the battery supply chain isn't built, challenging an industry aiming to sell tens of millions of EVs in the coming years. And Evan found this one from the Wall Street Journal that the Ukraine war stokes concerns in Taiwan over its fragile internet links. Taiwan worries about how vulnerable its undersea cables are to any potential Chinese attack as the self-ruled island watches Kyiv use the internet to rally support. Well, China could cut the internet to Taiwan, and then Elon would have to do the same thing he did in Kyiv, which
Yep.
is
Our digital minister need to find his Twitter.
yeah. And BB found a really interesting one from CNET. And I'm tweeting all of these, as always, to the Tech News Twitter account in real time as I read them. So I'm just retweeting BB's tweets and everybody's tweets here. This one is from CNET that a NASA has created a hologram and teleported that hologram of Dr. Onto, of a doctor onto the International Space Station. So they've holoported, they're calling it, which is teleporting a hologram. So they made a hologram appear inside of the International Space Station of a doctor talking to the astronauts, ostensibly. That's wild. And then this might be my favorite one. Jeff G just found a new Japanese show on Netflix about sending toddlers into the center of very busy cities on their own to run errands by themselves without the help of their parents. Cheryl
I
is going to.
watched that.
Yeah, I was about
I
to
watched
say.
that. It's very interesting.
Yes. So, but as Cheryl or anyone who's ever lived in Tokyo knows, this is part of life in Tokyo, and it's to me one of the enjoyable daily things that you encounter living in Tokyo is little kids running around, and I'm talking 5 years old sometimes, running around by themselves on their own, totally safe, going to school, coming home, going to the supermarket, coming home with milk or whatever. And it's because God bless Japan and is especially considering its size of, it is, and by some accounts, the world's biggest metropolis, and yet it's still one of the safest places you will ever find. And it's God bless them. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing that still exists, and so much of
But
And
Tyler,
Tyler, you
what
know,
was
in the United States, they would take the kids into child services into
correct.
custody, and they'd arrest parents for child neglect.
going to allude to?
Yeah,
What was interesting was the perspective of that show. It was almost as if they were quite subtly saying, "There's something wrong with this. Well, how is a child able to?" But having been there quite often enough and lived in Asia, and it mirrors my own culture, children are given far more respect and honor in those cultures. There's a sense of revelry for their intelligence and capabilities for adapting that we sort of take away from children by virtue of the violent nature of our environment, where they've been able to balance keeping children quite innocent, but also teaching them great responsibilities at an early age. It's amazing.
So the article says that the new Netflix series is called Old Enough and will likely have hearts of some parents in their mouths. It features kids as young as 2 years old taking on tasks such as shopping for groceries, walking a mile to and from home, and navigating public transport on their own. Cameras follow the child from a distance while they perform errands and challenges set by their parents and the makers of the show. And I can't
hey Tyler.
emphasize.
By the way, speaking of Netflix, by the way, they are reporting earnings after the close of the market today, and it's going to be probably the biggest report that's going on in Wall Street. That everyone's focusing on Netflix earnings this today. More specifically than earnings, the number of subscribers, whether or not what they added or didn't add, because to see what their growth rate is, because they it's been slowing as of last quarter. So watch for that, because Netflix stock will be very volatile after the close today when they announce whatever number they announce, plus or minus.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just have to reiterate that is totally real. Young kids going about their business in Tokyo in Shinjuku Station, which is the world's busiest train station, probably by a lot actually, and it's adorable. And I would like to say that you smile every time you see it, but you actually see it so often that you just it becomes ordinary, regrettably, and I guess it should be ordinary, and it should be ordinary everywhere, and it's regrettable that it's not. And again, a well-deserved kudos to Japan for keeping that um, alive and happening, and it's a testament to um, one of the beautiful aspects of Japanese culture, which, just to point it out by name, it goes beyond kids. It's the point that you don't meddle with someone else's uh, property. Basically, there's an incredibly high amount of respect for other people's property in Japan, such that if somebody leaves an iPhone or even a brand new MacBook, even the shiniest new M1 MacBook, at a Starbucks or a McDonald's, as I myself have done, or a wallet that is obviously full of cash, as I have done in a payphone booth when those things used to exist, it will not be meddled with. It will be there, and the only circumstance where it would be meddled with is if they know where you went and they will chase you down to bring it to you, and they will go way out of their way to do that. By the way, and I've seen YouTube videos of prank videos of exactly that, because they're just testing, and highlighting the kind of almost cartoon-like ability of Japanese people to return people's possessions to them. It's totally endearing.
I've ever I've ever had one of this experience because I went to a bar in Tokyo and I was so drunk and it was the last train. It was shooting. So when I got off the train and I left my purse there, and I was so drunk, so I actually didn't notice anything. But suddenly, a young guy, I think is around 20s, and he just ran like 3 floors to me because I was taking an elevator, and he ran to me and said, "Ni nesang," that means big sister, it's your purse. So I was so embarrassed, but also amazed about the Japanese honesty.
Their honesty is amazing. I remember 20 years ago I was in Osaka just writing, and the tip that I left was equal to the bill, right? And so I go walking out. I had been there, and they're so into jazz music. I felt so embarrassed because they were educating me. So I walk out, and the owner of the establishment runs down the street in high heels trying to give me my money back. And I said, "Oh no, no, that's yours." But I was just blown away. I mean, granted, I know it's not as much a tipping society, but I was blown away at the honesty. But I was also blown away at like somebody that beautiful chasing me down. But yeah, I just love the culture.
Yeah, everyone, nearly anyone who has spent any amount of time there has similar stories. So it's just a testament to one of the beautiful aspects of the culture there that stays with you.
But Taylor, a
And
little supplement about the Netflix. Actually, it was a show from 1991. So back then, letting kids as young as 2 years old go out do some errands was a common situation for parents back then. But right now, the laws in Japan also has a year an age that you cannot let your kids at home by themselves. So that's one aspect. Yeah. So the European parents are furious about letting kids as young as 2 years old go out, and that is not allowed right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm done.
Hey,
Okay.
Tyler, I was going to ask you. I just jumped on because I wanted to ask you what do you think changed? Or, I mean, I know it's a cultural thing. Why don't we have that in other cultures? Is it literally is it the laws that's keeping them, and then it's turned into a culture? I mean, what can other people do? What do you guys think is so different in Japan?
I
Um,
answer it
can
quickly
I
I
because
just
could.
make a
you have
point?
kidnapping.
Okay, in Japan and Singapore as well, we are very safe here. So basically, people look out for, especially young children, right? They will just make sure they are safe. Anybody will make sure of that. So I'm not sure how is that in US.
That's a great point, because for that to work, you need to have a culture where the um, the young person, if they were to encounter any kind of trouble, the parent would need to be assured that everyone else would intervene on their behalf, right? If something did go wrong. So you wouldn't let your child go out and do that unless you were certain that if the child encountered any difficulties, any adult in the area would intervene. And essentially, that is a prerequisite to enabling that behavior. And in Japan, you have that where people will intervene to ensure the child's safety. And a part of that, I think even Japanese might say it's in some ways because they have a Japaneseness which introduces the concept of like the hetero or homogeneity of the society, that they look after each other. Um, but you know, it's that part is the overall is the intense respect for each other's property, and I believe it might be in some ways related to the point that there are the Koban system that Japan has, where there are policemen every 100 or 200 meters on street corners in these tiny shoebox-sized police stations. You know, they're almost the size of like a large bathroom or something. And those policemen on those corners know their neighborhoods intimately well, where they know pretty much every local person walking by. And if anything seems out of order, they will be instantly aware of it. And that is a very comforting factor as well. But I don't want to take away from the first point, which is the parents are assured that all the other adults will act in the right way if, you know, should there be any problems, and work with the child to return them back home. And that's totally true, because anyone, even as a tourist, will experience this if they go there firsthand. If you go there even as a tourist, and this actually goes above my previous point about this being a uniquely Japanese looking after Japaneseness, as you just heard Irwin say, it doesn't even matter if you're Japanese. If you're there and you need any kind of help, like you're lost or you left something behind or whatever, they will run to your support in that sense. So, and you can be assured of that. That's just a part of the culture. It's deeply ingrained, and I think you're going to have to need, if you're going to try and enable this in another culture somewhere, like in Europe, you're going to have to train everybody, and this would be very challenging, and it could take a very long time, even on a small scale, to train everyone to start being incredibly consciously uh, concerned for everybody else's property, so to speak. So I hope that answers the question.
Let me. It
Yeah,
does. It
like
does. I just wanted to
oh,
just follow up on that. What do you think? At some point, did we in America, in Europe, or just any country for that matter, did we were we like that, and then things changed? I mean, I like to think that maybe back in the day. I mean, that's kind of just the question that keeps coming up for me. What changed? Did we change? Is it the culture keep changing? And if we changed, why didn't they change? Right. So I'd like to
Well,
think that back in the
I
day in America was the same way. No.
I can speak for my time in Albany, and then my time when we were in Missouri, moved from upstate New York to. It was that way in at least where we were. But you also had we had multi generations who owned their property and had lived in the places, so we knew the families. So even when we moved to Missouri, my mother grew up in Missouri. My dad was from New York, and we had owned our property for, and everybody around us over 60, 70 years. So we all knew each other, and everybody was all over the place. And I was in the suburbs too. So, yes, people ran around. You didn't have to worry about all that craziness. But, all of a sudden we became pretty transient. And I don't know. I don't know if families know each other. I mean, I've lived in one of my places now for longer than I've lived anywhere else, and I don't even take the time to get to know my neighbors. So I don't think that helps. So I haven't helped.
yeah. I wanted to ask just on that point as well, which is like in Japan, you don't need to know the neighbor's name or
Right,
anything like that, or the child. It's
right,
basically if it's a lone child, you help, and it's just that.
right.
I think
Yeah,
it's a cultural matter of honor, or in Chinese, it'd be called face. Asians, I think, well, the Asian culture might value it a little more.
Yeah, no, because I can attest to in Britain, or should I say in my part of London, I can only speak to that where I had space to maneuver and I would know quite a lot of the elderly people, maybe not by name, but by face, if you're always running around the neighborhood, but that's an enclosed space, right? And then once you leave that space, there is this almost dauntingness of unknowingness. So I can't necessarily speak to, if you don't know them, then will they help you, sort of thing. But Yeah, it seems almost unique to that space, but I don't believe it happens so much in England as much as it does in Japan in that way. Like I would have to be very I'd have to scour history to see it, but from what I know of the British history, it's not necessarily been a massive thing.
To add to Robert's point, if we're just talking about like big cities to compare it say to Tokyo, in New York in my dad's day, you know when he grew up in New York, um, people live very close to other relatives. So aunts and uncles and cousins and everything may have lived on the same city block, or they lived one block over. So if it wasn't your parent, then it was a close relative that would also look after you. But what's changed in the United States is that people now live all over the country. People move. And so you don't have these uh, nuclear families that live, you know, on the same block or within the same city or within two city blocks. They live on other sides of the country, and I think that's a very big difference.
And also, if you look into Japan, even how their school system works, it's very much about contributing, being a part of something and of service. They take a lot of pride in that, and it's really trained from a young age. I think like they don't even have janitors because they assign students into those duties instead.
That's correct. Part of the students have to take care of the school, and they systematize it in a way that reduce. Yeah, you everyone has a responsibility to maintain the order of things. So yeah, that also plays a bit of a role.
Hey, Tyler, I'm curious about something. What is the
Tyler.
minimum age to drink alcohol
Great
in
question.
Japan?
There's a legal age, but like the UK, it's not as strict, and more so, you're allowed to drink in public, like walking down the street, which I fondly remember in one of my earliest visits to Japan, learning about that and being shocked as an American because you're not allowed to drink walking around outside in public in California, and I couldn't believe it. So we went to the police station, to the nearest police station, which was only 50 meters away, and I cheersed the policemen in the station, and they said "Kampai" back to me, and it's it's beer culture in Japan is you're allowed
Well,
to.
no, no. But the reason I ask that is because in the United States, we're a country that sends people who are between ages of 18 to 21. We tell them they're legal adults that can sign contracts
Yeah,
and they could be held culpable criminally for anything that they do. We send them off to war, okay, but they're not allowed to buy alcohol or now even buy cigarettes
yeah,
or play a slot machine in a casino until they're 21. So this whole idea, I mean, it's an issue I think that permeates all the way to that level as to when is someone old enough.
yeah,
I actually put something on my Twitter account yesterday, which is just by coincidence, and it was Tom Hanks, the actor, being interviewed by Ellen DeGeneres, explaining that he was at Coachella. It may not have been the current Coachella, I don't know, but he was talking about he was at Coachella and he wanted to get a beer, and he went up to get a beer, and because his ID had not been verified, so they would not give him, they would not sell him a beer, and he looked at her and said, "Do you think I'm not 21?" He said, "I'm 62, and you know who I am, right?" And they would not sell him the beer, not because he didn't have an identity to prove he was Tom Hanks, but because he didn't have the identity to prove his age, even though clearly, if, you know, Tom Hanks doesn't look like he's, you know, not 21. Okay. So, I mean, that is something, you know, in the United States, if we can't, if a 20-year-old can't buy a beer, how do you expect, you know, a 5-year-old to be able to do anything in
right.
this country?
You bring up a great point, which is we've become ruled by litigiousness, where people are afraid to intervene even when they should for fear of litigiousness. And that person was afraid to sell a beer, even though they knew goddamn well they should. Anybody with any common sense would have, but they stopped because they were of the litigious nature and the legal nature of things. And once you delegate your common sense to this litigious, ambiguous, nebulous authority, now you're not dealing in common sense anymore, and that's part of the problem. Why somebody that sees a kid in trouble is likely to have second thoughts about intervening for fear of litigiousness, which is totally asinine. Like, people should obviously use better judgment and
But it's not, Tyler, because I know this is going to sound crazy, but there are times where the Good Samaritan can be
that's
sued,
my
regardless of our Good
yep.
Samaritan laws. You know,
In
we just
places.
had
Yep.
somebody who we literally just had somebody in San Jose, actually a young man, football player, high school guy, stop a violent situation, and he got shot. He was the hero. You know,
Right.
so it doesn't motivate you to step in. I'll tell you,
Right.
it doesn't motivate me to step in.
Right.
And this can even spread, this is a very important point, Tyler, to law enforcement. This idea that you're afraid to step in because of the legit, what
Right.
might happen and whether you're obeying the right protocols. Scary
Right.
thing is when police officers start asking, what should I do here? What can I do? Should I intervene? And luckily that doesn't happen too often, but I think it's heading in that direction.
That's right. You're right. That's part of the reason. I'm so good. Getting back to the tweets here, BB found one from The Verge that drones are setting down roots in wildfire scarred landscapes. Tree planting efforts get a boost from drones, especially in places that have recently had fires, which makes perfect sense because there's a lot of nitrogen rich soil there, which is ideal for growing things. The next is from Katerina from science.org. It says, meet the psychobiome, the gut bacteria that may alter how you think and feel. Mounting evidence that gut bacteria influence the nervous system inspires efforts to mine the microbiome for brain drugs. Scientists hope to turn gut biomes or their products into new antidepressants or drugs for other brain disorders. It's amazing to me how something so fundamental to our own biology is still miraculously mysterious to us, that we're just learning this stuff now. Um, the next is from Jeff G. From the New York Times. It says, the tech bubble that never burst. For a decade, warnings about a tech bubble have only led to more money flooding into high growth startups. Could this be it? And the next is from Francine, and it says, New York, from the New Yorker, how democracies spy on their citizens. And I think this is the one Tan was sharing earlier today. It says, the inside story of the world's most notorious commercial spyware and the big tech companies waging war against it. And I think, are they talking about Pegasus, I imagine? And indeed, as somebody pointed out while I was busy trying to fix my laptop, that the governments ultimately have control of these things in ways that people are just starting to understand. And it tells you, I think, you can extrapolate that point into the crypto space and how much control these governments ultimately can influence technologies. And that's worth considering. So that is the extent of the most of the tweets. I have one here from Thomas Tong about the F-35 was designed precisely to fight and win in the kind of war happening in Ukraine, former test pilot says. And that'll be helpful if those things ever escalate to that degree. There's several other Ukraine articles about the sunken Russian ship. The International Monetary Fund says fast-growing fintechs pose challenges. Well, that speaks right to my last point about how governments control technologies. And thank you to Monica for that one. But I think that takes us to the end of today's tweets. Unless anyone else
Hey,
has
Tyler,
one. Yeah.
this news that just broke like less than
Yeah.
20 minutes ago. This
Okay.
is kind of probably an update on the story that I think you covered. Cheryl told me you covered it earlier. David Faber from CNBC, who's been with CNBC for like ever, at least 20 years, and he's super connected in the world of hedge funds and private equity and all of that stuff. He just came out a few minutes ago and said that Apollo is not going to participate in a bid for Twitter, nor does he think Thomas Bravo is. He thinks either it's going to be Elon Musk doing this, getting the money himself. That Twitter's going to accept that bid, and Elon's going to have to come up with the money somehow, or it's not going to happen. He doesn't think that the numbers work for private equity or high yield, or in which I agree. I certainly they don't work for high yield. Um, and so I just pointed out because that was like less than 15 minutes ago, even though earlier in the day or maybe yesterday it was even CNBC, but it was one of the major news outlets, talking about maybe Apollo is going to help bid on the help Elon with the bid. David Faber just came out and said, no, it's either Elon alone or it's not going to happen.
Hey, Ken, what about if some sovereign wealth fund from, let's just say, Southwest Asia might find some interest in it? Wouldn't it be fascinating if he went in with like Saudi Arabia and they ended up owning Twitter? That would be a wild ride to see
I think
what
the
comes out of it.
politics in this country would be fierce against that. Number one, I mean, particularly if it was if it was like Saudi Arabia or any country that sometimes helps us and sometimes doesn't. I mean, I think there's been some suggestions on other things I've heard about, maybe SoftBank, which is not sovereign wealth fund, but has a deep pool of money. The biggest pool of sovereign wealth actually is Norway. Okay, Norway runs like over $1 trillion because they have all that oil money. Is what we always think about Saudi Arabian oil, but Norway has the biggest sovereign wealth fund. And the thing about, even if it was the Saudis or the Norwegians or whomever, I think the issue there is that they want to make money. They take their fiduciary responsibilities, pretty seriously. Even in Saudi Arabia, by the way, I don't know if anyone's seen the articles. There was a very big dispute about whether their sovereign wealth fund should give money to Jared Kushner's private stuff that he did post Trump. In fact, the Saudi board that runs that money didn't want to do it because Jared has no track record to do anything. Okay, and they were overruled by the prince. Okay, okay, but so I think, given the fact that those sovereign wealth funds, particularly the big ones, tend to be really well run, and they take that stuff seriously. I think they're going to sit there and look at the numbers and say, do